Great, thank you. So, with the acknowledgement, Women's Community Shelters acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and waters. We pay our deepest respects to Elders past and present and extend that respect to all First Nations peoples today. We honour their strength, resilience and enduring wisdom, recognising the deep and sacred connections to land, waters and community connections that have existed for tens of thousands of years and continue to be unbroken. We will continue to advocate for change so that those emerging may never need to question their safety, can live a life free from fear and flourish. And Anna, you're now going to present the Employee Network Survey results for the last time, I think, tonight.
Yes, thank you, Helen. I will share my screen. And yes, I think this is round 3 for me. So we've shared these with the Chairs Forum and the Shelter Network meeting today with shelter managers and business managers. I will run through the slides, but please shout out if there's any questions as we go. As we're recording this, we might step through the slides and then we can pause and stop the recording and have some personalised discussion at the end. So our staff survey results for 2025, the network it's not grown, but it has changed in makeup. So really important that we're doing this on a regular basis. Of the staff that were issued the survey earlier this year, after Easter this year, 39% of those were new employees since the last time we issued it, again around the April period last year. The total number of staff sent the survey this year was 59 staff, so a decrease on last year because of the Northern Beaches shelter no longer being part of the network. And the survey consisted of 34 questions, similar questions to asked in previous years that all had a rating from strongly agree to strongly disagree, so a 5-point Likert scale. And there were comments able to be made in response to each question as well as the rating. There were also 4 open free text questions at the end. Best thing about my work, what is most challenging, one thing that could make the workplace better, and just an open other feedback to share. We also asked a new question this year for feedback from the network on the support that they received from the hub. So from those 34 questions, 4 open questions, comments throughout, there's a real wealth of information that we'll be talking through today. I'll next speak to our participation rate and the overall engagement rate. So generally for engagement surveys, you're looking for a participation rate that falls between the 65 to 85% range. When you're 50 to 60 staff, you're wanting to see it in that higher percentage range because that ensures that the feedback is representative. Last year we had a decent response rate of 73%, but we've had quite a reduction this year, so only a third of the network completed the survey. So our responses are 34.4% in 2025. That was something that we discussed in the Shelter Network meeting today that also surprised some of the shelter managers that were there. And we spoke about that being a question to go back to the teams as to if people chose not to participate, are they comfortable sharing their reasons? Often, we see a decent participation rate as representative that there's safety in providing feedback. But that's not the only reason that people choose to give feedback or otherwise. And with our network, it could be related to how people identify with the broader WCS network as opposed to their local shelter, and maybe not seeing value in providing feedback there because they're providing feedback internally. I'll stop coming up with possibilities because they're conversations to be had at the local level.
Yeah, I'm just sharing, Anna. I think there's also the fact that a lot of the survey outcomes or the feedback is not actually tailored or to the particular shelter, because obviously there's not enough sample representation and so on and so forth. We want to definitely respect the confidentiality and anonymity of the respondents, so we don't break it down by, Bayside scores or Sanctuary scores or whatever. I think that what I have heard from in talking to some of the shelter teams has been that what's really in it for me, because you don't get anything specific on Sanctuary, so why should I bother, right? And because, at least in my experience as an HR person, the value in a survey is in the insights and the feedback from that insights. And if that there are no insights for them, and they don't see any tangible difference being made with their day-to-day working because of any feedback they may have provided, positive or negative, they don't see it's worth spending, the 60 minutes on. I think that's probably the core of it. So maybe, I don't know, this is just a suggestion and it's not something that can be done this time round, but something for WCS to maybe consider is actually running the survey for the staff as well as the boards of the shelters together, which would give enough representation, probably, and which would probably also help then break down the results by each entity, which one could take back to the shelter and say, okay, this is what the board thinks, or this is what the staff is thinking, and maybe this is how we need to change our everyday, or these are the smaller things that we can make influence to have a meaningful impact in their day-to-day working. So it's just a suggestion. Of course, it's
thanks for
there are
sharing
pros
that.
and cons with that approach as well. But I think it's probably going to remain a trend like this if we don't give any personalized insight to the shelters.
And I think you hit on something really significant there, Napura, which is if people don't see action from their feedback, they're unlikely to provide feedback again, because what's the point?
Yep.
I do think that even without, and I think this is the ask on us this year, is that while we are unable to provide personalised, what we can still do is say, this is what's come out, and individual shelters could say, does that resonate with us? Is that our strengths and our areas for improvement, or would we have different ones, and be able to have a conversation and action plan from there, so that we don't have to wait another year, because I guess even in a engagement survey, your data can get, experiences can get lost in the averages, and in any organisation there will be people who have a different experience than what might come out as the overall. But I think exploring how we can create more opportunity to give that specific shelter feedback and then allow that specific action is really helpful. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, because each shelter, as we know, is quite different. And I think the Sanctuary last year even said they would have preferred to have their own survey, but due to the size, as we've mentioned, it couldn't happen. But if you include the board, if you include the volunteers in the responses, yes. So
I think that's a really interesting suggestion as well, and it is something that we've sort of raised internally this year. should there be a board version, and what would that look like if there was? So it's interesting to hear, Nupur, you say that maybe it could be combined, like that could be a good way to capture it, because I mean boards are absolutely part of the network and, you know, just as important as the paid staff. So yeah, I like that suggestion. We can think about that for next year.
Yep, and you know, to Anna's point around taking the holistic findings and survey results back to the staff, we did do that last year too, Anna, because I don't think the sanctuary has participated many times in the survey. They probably participated the first time last year.
Yeah, I think a few
and
shelters last
because
year.
you know I've been around also just for the 10 odd months, so I knew that they participated last year. But when it was taken back by Bridget to the team, it was like, yeah, really doesn't resonate very much, and we're happy, and you know there isn't. It's just that we're just. I think the people were really just concerned about where are we going to be moving to, because that's top of mind for the sanctuary team, right? But other than that, I think it was very hard to get anything out of that conversation with the team, even with the sharing of the holistic results, which doesn't mean that we won't do it again.
Yeah,
we will of course do it again. But it's just that we probably need to be, we you know, we may still get that very cynical kind of response from them that, you know, this doesn't really apply. So yeah,
no, I understand that. Thank you. I'll step into the engagement score this year, and I think you also touched on an interesting point there, Nupur, that when a team is in a good place and when ratings in the survey are good, it actually puts you in a funny position because there might not be as many areas for action. Although I would say then you can go, well, how do we hold on to our strengths?
yes,
And what do we
how
keep
do we
doing?
strengthen them? Yes.
Yeah. But interestingly, last year's engagement score was quite high, 84%. This year it has reduced a little bit to 78%, which is still quite a strong score to see. That's the percentage of favourable answers to those 5 questions on the screen there. And taking the non-profit average published by Cultureamp each year, their Australian non-profits report an average of 70% engagement, so stronger than the average in our region. The next
It's not
slide.
surprising it's come down because, you know, in my experience, there's always a correlation between participation and engagement scores. So when participation drops, engagement scores drop usually. Which doesn't mean that the people who haven't participated aren't engaged. They just can't be bothered because things are all right, and you know.
Not seeing a 5%.
Yeah.
The next slide is just going to dip us a little bit into participation. So we do ask by shelter for people to identify, and we are conscious that this might be a reason for people not wanting to complete as well. Just that comfort level around being identified is always there in engagement surveys, and you see it in orgs of every size and platforms of every variety. There's an assumption that we're trying to find out who's saying what, which suggests we have a lot more time in our days than we do. So we have identified from almost all shelters at least 1 individual, 5 individuals who selected the prefer not to say. So we do have at least a good spread of at least people contributing across the network, and with the hope that there's somebody in that prefer not to say that's also representing Bayside.
So just to clarify, Anna, this is percentage of people or absolute? Yeah. So 2 people numbers from Sanctuary participated. Okay.
That identified, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And that identified. Yes. Thank you. Okay.
And next graph is the categories overall. So the questions through the survey sat across 7 categories, engagement being one. And across the network, the ratings actually improved across a lot of categories. It was only in engagement that there was a fall. That small drop, interestingly, at the same level of engagement as there was in 2023. The increases are, a slight or at the same. Quite a big increase in wellbeing, which is an interesting area that we'll talk about because there's both strength and areas for improvement there. And where we had the other decrease was in reward and recognition, and that was quite a large decrease of 20%.
That's a significant drop.
Yeah. Not surprising given the recent, conversations and increased focus on salary for attraction and retention. But yeah, really flagging that this is something that is front of mind to those completing this survey.
Yeah, it's obviously exacerbated significantly with the cost of living increase. And yeah, everybody's really feeling that.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
Their earnings aren't enough, right? Yep.
The next few slides, I won't step into line by line. There's a lot of information on these, but these are all the questions that we asked, and they're rated from those that had the strongest favourable ranking to the lowest favourable. On this slide, you can see that this slide actually represents more than a third of the questions, and we are not even below 90% on the strongly agree. So highly favourable in the responses. And focus to these 90% above is really around clarity of role, having the tools to do my role, being able to be myself at work, being encouraged, you can see there 100% encouraged to have a healthy work-life balance, and good, processes around, self-care, having energy and resilience. So really incredible to see that, considering the work that's done across our shelters. Although, as I said, there's some two sides of wellbeing in this, so we'll look into the other side of it in areas for improvement in a moment. Second of the questions, those sitting between, again, we're not getting that low here, between 90 and 75% favourable. You'll see the difference in this slide if I just step back here and then back again. We're starting to get more sitting in the neutral zone, so more people in that not sure where I sit, and a bit more in the disagree zone. The theme of these ones tends to be around training and development. And you can see here coming in below the 80% is I'm able to manage my workload effectively. So interestingly to have that, the ones before are about having the tools and the resources and the support, but I guess that also can speak to the type of work that we do. And lastly, our lower outcomes, so 60 to 50% favourable, tends to focus here on longevity in the role and remuneration and recognition. So feeling my REM is fair is sitting there at that 50% agree. And the highest number in our disagree there. The two questions above, so the second and third lowest at 55% favourable, are about longevity and career with the workplace. And I think that's one that is one that each shelter and each workplace needs to consider where their threshold is, because 2 years in a caseworker role might be where an organisation is comfortable. It is the career timeline. After 2 years, that might be the time to step into a team leader role, which that shelter might not have, or that might be the time for a different type of role for that reducing burnout cycle. So it's not necessarily a negative, it just gives us a bit more information about where people are thinking.
Yeah, because at least I can only speak for the sanctuary when we're looking at us small staff of about 5 people, not including Bridget, the shelter manager. A lot of, I'd say 3 of the 5 are relatively early in their careers. And there is, I know for one, like, for example, Louisa recently, I think Louisa, if I've got the name right, recently just separated from the sanctuary only because she wanted to travel and study further. And, so she's at a different stage of her life and career. And I don't think that's a bit surprising that a lot of people probably want to do, 2 years is good time as a caseworker. I think that, like you said, needs to be looked at in the context of the work they do and the size of the shelter, and because really it's very flat structured, right? You're either the shelter manager in the sanctuary scenario or you're a caseworker. There isn't anything to progress to, let's say.
Yeah. So for that career development, or for, as in this space, your frontline roles and roles in crisis work do tend to have a shorter span that they work in the space. And again, that's sometimes supported from a wellbeing perspective, that to be in a crisis or a DV setting for an extended period might not be the best for somebody's wellbeing and boundaries and all that.
Yes. The other question, actually, Anna, I had, the slide obviously at the top says this is consistent with 2024. So is that consistency, sorry, I don't know if it was there in the previous 2 slides or not, but is that consistent across the questions in what you've seen, that, the trend tends to continue in the same way over the last couple of years?
For the network, there wasn't a high difference, and I'm just going off my memory here.
Sure.
That comment there focuses primarily on what those areas for, or the lowest rated questions.
Okay.
It wasn't that I think it was similar. So I just know it did an analysis to see, have there been big changes in the positive scores, and nothing was too different from the previous years. So I'd say yes, it would be fairly consistent.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Good question. I'll jump into a bit of a higher level overview now. So the key strengths that came through the survey from both the ratings on the questions, but also the comments throughout that people were so generous with. Absolutely. And, we often see this in nonprofit for-purpose work, that purpose is really big. So staff throughout the survey shared how much they value the mission, the impact of their work, and the focus on clients and community. And obviously, this is really contributing to their sense of meaning and motivation to their role. And I'll share some verbatim comments shortly that really demonstrate that. Building off that foundation, team culture is really strong. So there were phrases: great team, strong culture, incredible people, really painting a picture of a supportive and values aligned team and team culture, which is really promising to see. That builds psychological safety, particularly with difficult work. Wellbeing, as I said, I'll speak about the opportunity element of it in a few slides' time, but there was a strong positive sentiment around wellbeing as a strength and around the support for wellbeing. So those questions about being encouraged to have a healthy work-life balance and feeling resilient even in difficult times. There were comments throughout about the support of the manager, local manager, and encouraging that. And of course, underpinned there the leadership. So local or direct leadership was viewed really favourably good results in the answers around leadership, and lots of comments that described managers as approachable, supportive, and skilled. Again, that's pretty golden to get that from an engagement survey.
Yeah.
And those strengths together paint, I used the word foundation before. That's a really fabulous foundation for an organisation to have. So
yeah.
They're the strengths to hold on to keep, to preserve. I'll speak next about the opportunities. Unsurprisingly, at the top there, Rem and Ben. So as we've been talking about in HR Forum, I spoke with Chairs Forum recently as well, just around this increasing focus, refocus. It sort of disappeared while flex and all sorts of other benefits came into the picture. But salary is the real driver for attraction and retention at the moment. And as you say, unsurprising given the ongoing cost of living crisis. The comments from staff, copied one there that says, I believe the pay does not reflect the responsibility or emotional demands of the role. So feedback in a mature way, and I think in keeping with some of the conversations that are being had at a broader level as well around gender undervaluation. We know that there's processes in Fair Work at the moment, and Shad's in the picture there. So, we know that REM is not something that we will fix in an instant, but it's something that is we need to be alive to. And I do think looking at where we can flex around benefits might be opportunities to sort of demonstrate value and retain staff in this continuing difficult world for retention. Second point there, systems and resourcing. So again, while survey results are positive about having the tools to do my role, did point out one of those, I think it was at about 75% around being able to manage my workload effectively. So there were some people on the unsure and some people on the negative on that. And the comments really highlight that there's some areas of frustration that people experience. And when I say inefficient systems or limited tools there, some of those comments were talking about the bigger picture systems, tools, external referrals and organisations, government bodies that they might need to deal with. So complexity there.
Right.
There were references to only a very small amount of references to staffing capacity or having staff to be able to support with some of the things that kind of come into the caseworker role, like cleaning. And they were all quite, again, maturely referenced. It was, I know we have limited resources. However, it would be great if, there was this extra support. So people aren't sitting there, not acknowledging the reality of the workplace that they're in. They were pretty respectful comments.
Right.
And last one for this slide, I've got two more in the next, training and career development. And look, unsurprising, career development, we just spoke about what does that look like in our organisations where structures may be flat or flatter. I think there's some opportunity to look at what opportunities there might be, network-wise when there is acting roles or what have you. There was also some feedback around training opportunities, and we had a good talk about that at the Shelter Network meeting today. Definitely an area that my wonderful colleague Michaela is passionate about. There was some direct feedback about areas of training to look into. So we've taken that on and looking into it. We'll be chatting further with the shelter managers on what might be appropriate and again what might be of benefit to approach from a network perspective as opposed to individually sourcing and accessing.
Right. Yep. Okay. That's a tough one. I think the career pathways one. But
Yeah.
I think it's a great suggestion if there was more, I'd say, transparency, maybe openness in sharing what might be opportunities in the wider network. And I don't know if, there are so many other organizations that WCS and each shelter works with as well. If there could be some sort of, just trying to work on the other side of the fence, that experience to make it all rounded. I don't know if we could get into some sort of partnerships around things like that with some of the agencies who refer our clients. Would they be, I'm just kind of like conjecturing here more than anything else, because I don't know this for a fact. But let's say in the police force, do they, sometimes in their local stations, do they have an individual who deals with certain kind of cases that come to them, and then they triage to the appropriate network? Because everything's not a criminal case for the police to kind of get involved in, I suppose. So I don't know. I'm kind of making that up. I'm just assuming these things exist. But that's something that maybe we could explore, and maybe WCS could talk to some of the referring organizations, even DCJ and so on and so forth, to see if we could create that, even if it's just like an exchange program of some sorts, which help people see that there's more to it than just being. I think being a caseworker is absolutely remarkable and fantastic. There's a lot that goes into that job, loads of respect for them, but I'm sure they're looking for more for themselves. So if we could create some of those pathways with our partners, we should probably explore that.
And you mean, Nupur, when you say that, you mean like sort of a staff exchange type
Correct.
program?
Correct. Like a staff exchange program, because sometimes I think when we are advocating for what shelters need, right? Whether it's not just from a funding perspective, but support and framework, etc. Sometimes I think the authorities have never lived in the shoes of anybody in a shelter, right? And so there's probably a lot of advantage for some of these referring bodies and partners of ours to also get people from our teams, because it creates that empathy in terms of what shelters actually need and how they can support us best. And equally, creates an avenue for our shelter teams to kind of look from a career perspective. And it probably gives the referring organizations a bit of a career pathway for their teams as well, right? To explore other options outside of their absolute core. Like a 6-month swap or something, or like an apprenticeship, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Just thinking, ideating as I speak.
It's a good thing. This is a good time for ideas. And yeah, I think it is really nice to think about career development across sector, because the reality is, in our organisations, somebody might not be stepping straight from caseworker to shelter manager, but supporting them in their career in the sector means that they may come back when they are more experienced, more well-rounded. You're actually building the strength and capability in the sector, which is what we hope for, and what creates good people doing good work and wanting to work within the network. So yeah. I'll step on to the last two opportunities. So there was an area of opportunity around leadership at the board level, which is, I think it's again the interesting shape of shelters, the reality that frontline staff are so much closer to the board than they may be in a larger NGO, means that they're actually looking to the board more and wanting to hear from the board more. So there were comments that suggested a disconnect or a lack of visibility or communication between frontline roles and the board. And a reference there, not sure how connected the board is with our day-to-day reality.
Right.
It's worth noting that these comments very much appear to be from frontline staff.
Of course, yes.
Because I think within that as well, unspoken, but, I got the sense of what's the understanding of the frontline staff and what the board is doing. So worth noting that there were positive comments throughout from managers about clear direction and communication with their board. So shelter managers or business managers completing the survey are feeling positive around that relationship and that communication.
Yep.
But there's something lacking there for frontline staff, and it's a common conundrum, which is just getting that level of communication right from a leadership level to staff, so that they feel they're in the loop and they're acknowledged. And it may be that there's actually not that much to communicate that feels of relevance, but how do you get that connection in the right place?
Yeah, I think the board relies very heavily on the shelter manager to be the conduit. And I mean, obviously, I can only speak for the sanctuary, but I'm assuming this is true of all the others as well, that there's obviously clarity and communication with the shelter managers. And so that's why there are more positive comments from that section of the team. And it's not surprising that, the teams don't necessarily know what the board's up to, or what do they think of what they're up to, because they just don't. And I think, just speaking for the board, there's this whole, do we want to really be in their space all the time? Do they, because like the shelter is the client's home, and we need to respect their privacy at all times, and they're going through a very difficult period, and obviously the shelter teams are managing it, and it becomes very difficult for them too. So for boards to maybe, be more present could be seen as an interference sometimes too. But it's a very fine line to balance. I think we could get better in striking that balance, at least even if it's not physical presence, getting better communication, even if it's a quarterly update, and maybe that could, again, just ideating, that could probably address some of the recognition piece as well. If it's just communication from, I don't know, the chair or even the HR person on the board, just say that, fantastic, these many clients is what you helped with over the last quarter. We're very proud of you, blah, blah, blah. This is what's being planned for the next quarter.
Yeah.
And which is reinforced by the shelter manager. Maybe that helps the recognition, our gratitude piece, and also some visibility to the board. So I'll definitely take that back as an action for the sanctuary board to consider. To see, I mean, and this is just an idea I've come up with right now. There may be better ideas. I'm sure the board's got better ideas and much more experience.
I also think keeping it simple is one, it means it's sustainable.
Yeah.
But also, we're not working with a huge amount of detailed feedback. It's just saying we want more connections. So what can be put in place that makes that sustainable, that can be continued? And what you just spoke about then, something that looks back and looks forward. It's grabbing recognition, it's connecting to purpose, which is that strength that we want to keep, So yeah, I think that's a really beautiful suggestion.
One of the other things I've seen some of the other boards do, Napur, is in their strategic planning day, which they usually do once a year, have the staff in that as part of that, maybe not for the entire day, but like come in for, the last hour or something. And I've been to two like that this year. And it seems appreciated from both sides, because the board learns a bit more from the staff who are on the front line, who perhaps you don't have that much to do with, because like you said, you talk to the shelter manager most, and the staff then also learn more about the board and the general direction. So, I mean, I don't know if you're planning to have one of those days, but if you are, I think
We are actually, it's very timely, Michaela, the suggestion, because we are thinking of a strategy day most likely sometime in August.
Awesome.
Because we've had a bit of change on the board, and so we're in that mode where I think we're ready, and it's the start of the new fiscal year as well. So August is when we're thinking of bringing the team together. I think it's a fantastic suggestion to bring in the shelter team if we could, and even if it's not in a strategy session, even if it's just call them in for the afternoon tea and just have a conversation, where it just gives them a bit of a break, but equally allows for both parties to learn from each other. That influences the strategy session, of course, but because I think sometimes teams can find it very overwhelming. You call something a strategy session, and then they're wondering, what is expected of me? What am I supposed to take to this, right? So we could format it appropriately, but I think it's a fantastic suggestion. Thank you.
No worries.
Beautiful. I will finish up on this slide with the last, and again, not a surprising comment. That's an area. It's not an area of opportunity or improvement. It's an area to be aware of, and an area to make sure that we've got the right processes and controls in place around. And that is, throughout the survey, there was feedback around emotional demands of the role, and at times the workload of the role. So again, quite measured responses about the workload being varied, and at times can feel a lot. And I think they do carry weight and really speak to the psychosocial risks of the work that we do. And so just a reminder that even though wellbeing is strong, I think that's a real sign of the teams, the leaders, the individuals doing the work and having the right focus. There's still a high risk in these spaces around the work that's done. Now, I'm mindful of time. The next few slides are verbatim comments, so I won't read through all of them. I think maybe these are to be reviewed afterwards, but it's just really beautiful to see the language, especially around the answer to this question, the best thing about my work. And that second one there, working with an incredible team of people passionate about making a difference in the lives of women and children. There's a real sense of purpose, team and clients, and that's the absolute just throughout all the answers to this question. Next question, element of work that I find most challenging, demonstrates here, particularly those first few, really acknowledging the type of organisation that they work within, and the sector that they work within. So the bigger system was often referenced here, and seeing in that last one emotional, mental struggles within the role. So the impact of the work that's done. One thing that could be implemented to make my workplace a better place to work. So this is the guide of what would help to lift. And over 50% of the answers to this referred to wellbeing or flexibility. So interesting that they were two areas that scored well, that increased in their scores, but is still an area for requested for improvement. So, and all things here that we have been speaking about at forums. So request for introduction of wellbeing leave. There you can see increased connection between board and shelter team. Supervision, so an increase in supervision or adequate supervision is requested there, and really linking that again to the wellbeing of the team is required for the client outcomes, and supervision being, again, in the work that we do, one of those key controls for individual wellbeing. And 9-day fortnights or regular working from home, additional leave, again, were all opportunities that were referred to as something that would make the workplace a better place to work. So I know these have been discussions that we have been having. It remains in focus for our staff, and there is finalising a recommendation document to share across the HR forum around where to focus, what can be considered at an individual shelter level and at a network level around changes to wellbeing, flexibility and benefits. So we know this is significant.
Yeah. And that's all very, very good feedback. And like you said, Anna, we're all, I think, discussing it already and trying to make a difference in our own small way. There's
actions happening all over the network, and I think it's good when there are no surprises in the feedback, because it means that what is happening at a local level around, feedback already is working. We're not finding out something that nobody's raised, so people do have that safety in voice, which we want. The last few slides, we switch tack a little bit. There were 4 questions in the survey this year that were new, that asked around network satisfaction with support from the hub.
Right.
So we asked whether the support from the hub helps Shelter Network operate effectively and efficiently, whether WCS understands the needs of the network and responds, whether our staff are available and helpful, and whether being part of the network is an advantage. Responses to these questions were overall 76% favourable, and the strongest response related to that last question, the value of being part of the network, which was 86% favourable. And that was not just being part of, connected to WCS as the hub, but connected to the greater network and the sisterhood that they can tap into there.
It's fantastic feedback. That whole statement or comment is great. Yep.
Yeah. Some areas, 2 areas, strengths and areas for improvement. So there were good strengths in the appreciation of hub staff. So nice to get that feedback, that connections and interactions with the hub are supporting our network. The challenges experienced really related to change and turnover in WCS, and how we are communicating or setting expectations at times. I think for us, that's also not new news. There's certainly areas that we would acknowledge are areas we want to improve, and we really take on board this feedback and how we continue to work with the network.
Right. I probably will get some more feedback on the, the point around the client KPIs, etc., because we are putting in place some KPIs for our shelter manager. Of course, I think I had raised this last year, and then WCS has, given us a bit of a template to work with, which we've then further tweaked to our context. And I have that discussion with Bridget next week. she's been off, I've been off, so we've just not got around to talking about it. But I think there are just some concerns around the reporting requirements, because not every client is very easily willing to provide the feedback that WCS really wants, because I think at different stages there's client feedback being sought as well. And while they're comfortable talking to, let's say, the shelter manager or the staff verbally, they don't want to put things down in some sort of record system, because there's always worry about, I think, just confidentiality, privacy, and we know these women are obviously not just second guessing themselves, but second guessing everything around them. The trust is a big thing to really establish with our client group, right? So anything we seek formally of them in terms of paperwork and documentation is not always seen as that's helping me in any way. I think that's probably what some of those comments are around as well. But I'll understand that more from Bridget in the sanctuaries context.
Yeah. And Nupur, I'm very happy to have a conversation with you either before or after you have that chat with Bridget to help clarify some of those points as well, because while there are KPIs, the main KPI is obviously around the client numbers, which is set through the contract, the funding contract with DCJ. That one's kind of non-negotiable.
Yep.
The other ones are around, like you said, to do with, they're not quite surveys, they are asking for client input, but the client absolutely can decline to do that, and that is absolutely okay. What we would just ask is then that the caseworkers record that they declined.
Right.
End of story. That's fine. We don't need to push it anymore. So I guess it's kind of the KPI around that is just that we don't have people who haven't been given the opportunity or haven't been asked. So either we've asked and they've said yes, or we've asked and they've said no. Both are fine, but we just want to know that we're fulfilling that. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's probably not that understanding. I don't know this for a fact. I'm conjecturing here more, but they probably don't understand that it's okay to decline and fill that the client declined, and it does not reflect anything on the staff worker, caseworker in that scenario. But it's just for us to know statistically how we're tracking. Yeah. Okay. That's really helpful, Michaela. And there may not be enough time for you and I to catch up ahead of Bridget's discussion. But I will come back to you with what I've had a conversation with her, if there are more concerns, and then we can iron it out.
Yep,
thank you.
Absolutely. Call me or email me anytime.
I'll do that. Thanks a ton.
Wonderful. Thank you. One more slide for me, 1 minute to go. So perfect timing.
Helen was very serious when she said in the note that we've got an hour and that's all it's going to be covering today.
To take us back to where we were talking earlier, obviously next steps are around taking action, and that doesn't necessarily mean deciding that we're going to fix this and run with it. It's about reflecting back to the teams. And as we discussed, demonstrating that feedback's been received, heard, and is being considered before action is one of the best ways to ensure that people participate in the future.
Yep,
so with our conversation with Shelter Network today, what I'd like to do is reach out to them around what supports they need, whether it's a version of the presentation, so that they can have those conversations with their teams, but also if there's views across the HR forum around how boards may want to be involved in that as well. Really comfortable for shelters to take the approach that best suits them.
Yep, our next board meeting is in 2 weeks' time, Anna. So I will, ahead of the meeting, I will share if you are able to share the slides with me, I'll share with the board. And I'll probably ask for 15 minutes to have a discussion on what we think from a sanctuary perspective we could take away as reflections and then action areas. And Bridget joins the meeting, so
Perfect.
we would be able to get her thoughts as well. And I could then also, when I talk to Bridget about KPIs, I would definitely talk to her about what her thoughts are on the survey and where she thinks her team is, what she might need, and I'll come back, feedback to you.
Yeah, perfect. Sounds
No
great.
worries. Thank you. This has been very good, and it's been very helpful to have the personalized session. Thank you.
Yeah. It's great. I think we've actually got more feedback from you than when there's a group. So thank you so much for bringing all your ideas and thoughts. Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm happy to have been heard, which you always do, but it's easier when there's no one else. So thanks.
Thank you.
Right.
So the next meeting, next HR forum is the 20th of August.
Yes, Helen, if you don't mind, could you please resend me the invite? I've done something, I've stuffed up my calendar somehow. Yeah. But I've manually put in the dates now because it was in the newsletter that you'd circulated a while back too. But the invite, I always have to go back and pick up the meeting ID, etc. Yeah. Can't click on it. Okay.
I'll resend, not a problem at all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It was lovely to see you, Nepal.
Lovely to see you too, and have a great evening ahead.
You too.
You too.
We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Great.
I have